Hi everyone, I am Sneha, co-founder and CEO devcompass, and I am absolutely thrilled to have you guys back. I hope all of you have gone through the stage 0 videos, and now we're moving on to stage 1. For those of you who do not know what I'm talking about, head over to devcompass.ai and you will get all the information about this particular Claude certificate preparation course. Let's get started. So today's video is going to be all about AI agents. In stage 0, we established what Claude is, a model that takes text in and produces text out. And if that's all it did, take a question, give an answer, it would be useful like a very smart search engine, but that's not what we are building here, right? We're building agents, we're going to talk about things that are more into detail around the functioning of Claude, and an agent is a fundamentally very different thing. Let me show you what I really mean. If we go forward and look at this particular slide, let me change it, yes. So here's the simplest way to see the difference. Look at the two cards on the screen, left and right. The left card, it says just Claude, no agent. A user asks, what's my order status? Claude responds, I don't have access to that. Done. One round trip, the conversation ends. Claude gave the most honest answer it could. It doesn't know your order status. It has no way to find out. So it says so, right? Useful in some contexts, but for a customer support system, that's a failure. And that's what we're going to look at, since the certificate is going to talk a lot about scenario-based situations and questions. In the right card, you can see Claude is inside an agent loop. Same question, what's my order status? Claude thinks I need to look this up. It calls a tool, lookup order, okay? Passing the order ID. What's my order status? Claude thinks I need to look this up. It will call a tool, pass the order ID. The tool returns shipped April 3rd. Claude now has real information and responds that your order is shipped on this particular date. Done. But with a completely different result than what we previously saw. Same model, same Claude, completely different architecture. The difference is that in the right card, Claude isn't just generating text based on what it was trained on. It's reaching out, getting real information from a real system and incorporating that into its response. That's what makes an agent different from a chatbot. And that tool call setup, that wrench icon that you see in the middle of the right card, that's the key. Claude decided to call that tool. Claude decided which tool to call. Claude decided what arguments to pass. You defined the tool, Claude used it. And that's what we are going to look in the next slide. So I said that the Claude decided when to call the tool, which tool to call, what arguments to pass. That's not just some random detail. Those 3 decisions are the foundation of everything we build in this course. So agents are not just about conversations, it's about taking actions. Look at the 3 cards. For the first one, it says when to call a tool. Claude will read a situation. It will look at the user message, consider what it knows, and then decide whether it needs more information to respond well. If a user is asking about an order status, Claude knows that it doesn't have that information, so it needs to fetch a tool, and only then it can answer, right? In the card 2, it says which tool to call. Now, if you're going to talk about your order status, you know that you need some information around that, and there will be probably given a list of tools with description. Claude will read those description and pick the one that best matches what it is trying to do. So that's all about it. You cannot maybe call the tool around customer information, because that will not give anything around that, right? So the quality of those descriptions directly determines the quality of tool selection. And the card 3, what arguments to pass, Claude will look at the conversation, what the user said, what it knows, extract the right value. So if you have passed an information order 1402 or 1042, whatever that was, Claude will pass that as order ID, and if the user has given an email address, Claude will probably pass that or any relevant supporting information / argument, so that it can extract from the conversation every time it will call that particular tool. Now let's talk more about this scenario. So we're going to kind of use this a lot throughout stage 1 and stage 2. Since it's all about the customer support agent here. On the left, a customer is contacting support and asking something, right? Maybe, where's my order? Can I get a refund? What's my account status, etc. So the question goes in the center box, the customer support agent. Inside that box is Claude, acting as the brain. And connected to the right are there two databases. One is a customer database, which holds all the account records live, and the other is a order database, which has all the order records live. Inside the agent, there are two tools, get customer, look up order. So now it will talk to the relevant database and then it will fetch the information. This is a very simple premise. A customer asking something, the agent looking up to the relevant data, the agent responding. But this scenario is simple enough that you can understand every part of it completely and complex enough such that it surfaces the foundational pattern that we need to cover in order to answer any scenario-based question, specifically tool selection. There would be an agentic loop, which we will talk about in the next video, error handling, a lot of those scenarios. But one more thing about this diagram that we're going to keep coming back to it at the end of stage 1 would be maybe talking about MCPs and added hooks and coordinators and sub agents. So you have to keep this in mind. Literally save this image in your mind. It is going to be your reference point for the whole course. Next up. So now what do you see? Why does any of this matter beyond the obvious Claude can now look up things? 3 reasons, and all of these 3 are going to appear in exam questions. So I want you to understand them probably. The first part, Claude can work with real live data, not just what we have trained on. It will go your database, fetch your API at the moment of the conversation. This is what will enable agents like customer support agent and actually answer customer questions. A coding assistant that can actually read your code base, or maybe a research tool that can actually search the internet. Without tools, Claude is limited to its training data. With tools, Claude's knowledge is whatever your system knows. The second part, Claude can take multiple steps to solve one problem, because this is not just a conversation. You are asking it to fetch something, decide based on what it finds, look something else, then act. So a single tool call might not be enough to resolve a customer issue. Maybe you need to verify that a customer exists and then look up their order if they have any. So there will be multiple steps, and with that Claude will decide at each point what to do next based on what it found. And the third one is Claude knows when it's done. This is obvious. It's actually one of the most important properties of a well-designed agent. The loop will always have an exit condition, because it cannot run forever. It works through the problem step by step, and when it has what it needs to give a complete answer, it stops and responds. So that's it. The exit condition, we're going to look at it very carefully in the next video. It's where most agents break, so you have to hold on to that as well. Summing up, like some parts of it, I think you can look at it as the agent system. One distinction that I want you to make absolutely very clear, because again the exam will test it, and getting it too wrong leads to confused thinking about how everything works is not going to help. So look at the anatomy diagram on the screen. The large irregular oval is the whole agent system, everything. Inside it, in the center, is a small box, Claude, the brain. Surrounding that brain are other components of the system connected by arrows. At the top, the loop, the plumbing. Your code sends messages to Claude and receives Claude responses. It checks the stop, reason. It decides whether to run a tool or does it already have enough information. It manages what goes back into the conversation, and that's your loop. Arrow both ways between the loop and Claude, because if you send a message down, Claude decision needs to come back up for further steps. On the left is tool definitions. Your code defines these tool definitions. Claude will read them and knows what tool exists and which one do Claude wants to refer to. Arrow goes from tool definitions to Claude because Claude will consume the information. On the right is tool result. When a tool runs, the result goes to Claude as context for its next decision. So arrow will result towards Claude. And at the bottom is conversation history. Everything that has been said, every tool call, every result, all of it sits in the conversation history and gets sent to Claude with every message. And arrow is pointing one way because it reaches out to Claude, like the context has to be given to Claude. And outside the oval entirely is us, the user. The user messages come into the system as input, and then the system responds to go back out. So Claude here is the brain. It decides, but Claude is not the entire system. Your code is the plumbing, your code runs the loop, executes the tool, manages the conversation history. Claude never sees any of that directly. Claude only sees what you send it in each message. When the exams asks about what Claude controls versus what your code controls, this diagram has to be the answer. And this is the entire context of the agentic system. In the next video, we're getting into the engine room, the agentic loop, and specifically how Claude moves through steps, what controls when it stops, and what's the two most common ways to break it look like. And please don't forget the exit condition. But yeah, I think that's all. Agent is Claude plus tools, any LLM plus tools, a loop that knows when to stop. Claude will decide when, which, and how you define the tools. And remember, Claude is the brain. So you should know what Claude controls and what your code controls. That's it. I will see you in the next one.